On the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast this week, Sam and I had an opportunity to sit down with Tim Pratt, founder of Diverse Dogs, who shared his background in working with dogs and discussed the importance of understanding and managing emotions for both handlers and their dogs. This episode covers various aspects of dog training, including handling reactive dogs, the benefits of breathwork in managing stress levels, proper communication techniques, and the significance of play in building trust and confidence. Tim also introduced his online course, Reactivity Success Path, and has kindly provided a special 20% off discount code for our community. Use the code word therapy when checking out. Be quick though, because the course starts on the 8th of April 2025. So let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. I'm your co-host, Max, the social media manager for Therapy Dogs Australia, and you've got Sam King, the owner of Therapy Dogs Australia. How's it going, Sam?
Hello, everybody. It's going great, actually. I've got some updates, but we'll get started.
Yep, love that. Love that response. So we're joined today by Tim from Diverse Dogs. How are you going, Tim?
Hey guys, I'm really good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, well, it's definitely been a long time coming, as we were just saying before we started recording. So we're very
Ah,
excited to have you on today.
great. I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
How about, just to kick things off, you give the listeners a bit of an intro into your background and
If you do just like who you are and what you're doing now, and then we'll expand into the background because I know that there's a bit of story there.
oh, all right.
Yeah,
Yes.
Amazing.
no
Let's do that.
problems. Cool. Okay. Well, my name's Tim Pratt, and I'm the founder, owner, head trainer of Diverse Dogs. Diverse Dogs is a dog training development company, and primarily I work around the New South Wales border, South Gold Coast, North New South Wales. But I also work online and have online clients, as well as people that maybe travel a little bit to see me, that are outside of my immediate area. Primarily, I work with pet dogs. I have a background which we'll get into a bit later on, but my background is with working dogs, pretty elite working dogs. But my business now revolves primarily around pet dogs, and in particular, I work with a lot of reactive dogs. I work with all kinds of dogs, all behaviors, everything from just walking on a lead through to aggression issues. But I think what I really love doing, and what I get most value out of personally is working with owners that have reactive dogs, because there's just so many layers to it, and I'm finding that being able to make some really good progress for people in that area um, is often accompanied by, or is preceded by, people sort of losing a lot of hope around what they can actually achieve with the dogs and the life they can live with their dogs. So,
Mhm.
being able to see progress made in people's lives so that they can actually start enjoying their life so much better with their dogs is really rewarding. And so that's what I really love to do. But ultimately, I work with any dog, any behavior, and anybody who needs some help. So I'm just all about helping dogs and helping people. So that's what I do now. I've been doing Diverse Dogs for it's my third year in this business. But prior to that, I had 15 years working with the tactical response and drug detection dogs. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. Got
So
a few. Oh, you go.
I was going to say, so everyone who's just started listening, we're gonna go into all of that stuff about your history with working dogs and all those things, and learn more about you. But what I'm really excited by today is that we're going to be talking about co-regulation with your dog.
Yeah.
So get excited, people,
Woo.
because we've had this Tim and I have been talking about this podcast for months,
We
and
had a
it's only
great
just
conversation on We had a great conversation on the phone once, and I think I said to you, "Oh, I wish we were just recording that conversation
I
because it would have
know.
would have been brilliant." But let's hope we can replicate it today.
Honestly, I wish I was recording all of my conversations, because then I could have a reality TV show and I would be rich. So,
Yeah.
I would watch it too. Yeah, it would be great.
I feel like everybody would watch it.
I would.
Cool. So, you're doing the pet dog stuff. I know you do a bit with dogs that are in shelters and stuff like that as well. So
Yep.
lots of dogs, lots of owners.
Lots of, yeah.
Um, yeah, we'll go through your history. So you started with dogs in corrections.
Correct. Yeah. So I started my dog career in with Queensland Corrective Services. So I spent 15 years overall in the agency, and the majority of that, all up about 13 years, was on the dog squad. So prior to starting that job, I had pet dogs previously, but I was one of those oblivious pet dog owners that really didn't understand or have a lot of awareness around my own behaviors and the way I was doing things and training and communication. And I feel sorry, a little bit sorry for my old dogs, but they still had a great life. So much that I could have
Part of the
done better
journey.
back then. Yeah. So anyway, moving forward into corrections, actually on a temporary basis initially of what I thought it was going to be, because I did actually want to join the police, and so I was going through the process of that application, which was taking a long time. And my father-in-law at the time was still working at Woodford as a pastor. He'd volunteer to go in and talk to the prisoners about religion and spirituality and that sort of stuff. So he mentioned to me at the time, "Hey, have you thought about working in corrections?" And I was like, no, what's that? And anyway, so I looked up a little bit about it, and previous to that, I was working in gyms as a personal trainer and a gym manager. And there was a job advertised for a position as a gym officer inside the prison. So it was right down my alley. That was my entryway, I guess, into that role. And so I got the job, and then the initial job was actually just working with prisoners in the gym, teaching certificate 3 in fitness as part of their rehabilitation process as well. So there was a big sort of emphasis on, interacting with prisoners and rehabilitation and education and stuff. So very different to the role I ended up in the dog squad, which is a lot more about response and control. But that's where I started. And during the 8-week initial training that I had to do for that particular role, the dog squad came in and did a presentation for us newbies, new recruits. Um, and they brought a couple of their dogs in, they did this exercise, and I got to watch the German Shepherd run out and attack the dude in the suit and take him down to the ground, and just instantly just thought to myself, that's what I want to do. Like, how do I do that? And then from that point on, I hadn't even started the job yet, and that's where I wanted to go. So from there, I kind of just leaned into that. Whenever I had an opportunity to work with the guys on the squad, I'd volunteer, or they'd come down to the gym to do a search, and I'd put my hand up to go and hide something for them to find as part of the training, and just leaned right into it. And then, yeah, so that led me away from the gym, because to be on the dog squad, you need a lot more response type experience, because it's a tactical role. So you need to have a lot more hands-on experience in, say, emergency response and, working in that other area of the prison. So I moved out of the gym, started working in the accommodation areas as an officer, looking after 30 plus prisoners in the units, day-to-day activities, responding to incidents as first responder. And then moved my way through to emergency response training. And then from there was lucky enough to be around when there was 2 positions came available on the dog squad. I applied and managed to be successful. So that was my entry into the position. And then from there, I just absolutely loved every second of it, and my life's pretty much just been about dogs ever since. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got started. I guess more specifically in that role, I was working with tactical response dogs, and drug detection dogs. So we were dual qualified. My favorite by far was the tactical response dogs. They're the dogs that I really connected with and that I was really good at training.
Those are the bite takedown dogs. Is that?
I was
Yeah,
just about to
that's it.
ask.
Yeah, that's one of their capabilities. Yeah, so the takedown dogs is what we could call them, for ease of understanding for people. They had multiple roles. Biting, prisoner apprehension was definitely one of them. Crowd control, but they do a lot of things that other people don't think about as well, maybe within a prison context. So they also did the same stuff that police dogs would do. So we could track people. We could do area searches to look for evidence. We could do building searches to look for
Like a
hidden.
general purpose police dog?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So we called them general purpose dogs as well, but they were just working within the confines of a prison environment.
Yeah.
And so our role with those dogs was dynamic security, monitoring the prison, going for lots of patrols, just having that presence, and then also acting as a response unit, alongside the ERT for anything that was a little bit heavier than what the guys inside could deal with on their own.
What do you mean by a little bit heavier?
Well, you might have a group of prisoners that are refusing to lock down, or you might have a really quite serious violent interaction going on between prisoners. It could be anything, pretty much anything that just escalates into a response that's necessary, that's going to need a little bit of extra force if needed. And that's what they were there for. But the application of the GP dogs was just unreal, and their ability to be able to walk into an environment and just diffuse something immediately just by their presence was just amazing. So
Wow.
they're really good asset for the people working in that environment.
Cool. That sounds
So
like such a
cool.
spicy job.
It's a
Amazing.
lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun working with the dogs. Absolutely. And the drug dogs were fun too, you know, even though the GPs were my favorite. The drug dogs were fun to work with as well. We'd go in and search all the accommodation areas. We'd search visitors coming in. We'd search cars, delivery vehicles. So having the exposure to working with both of those dogs was really amazing, because a lot of agencies will, you know, qualify you with one or the other, and you pretty much just work with that one dog. And so with our role, we had the opportunity to do both.
Was the
Yeah.
training for those dogs done like externally and then they were brought in, or was the training done on site? Or
A little bit of both. So when we qualify with our dogs, we need to do 12 weeks worth of training with that dog at the academy, which is in Wacol. So, and then all the different jails within Queensland have their own individual dog unit or dog squad attached to each one of those jails. So our initial training and certification with the dogs was always done at the academy, and as part of that process, we would also visit a lot of the different centres and do training exercises in the environment that the dog's going to be working in. So that's the certification process, and then it's a never-ending, ongoing process, as you could imagine. So once we get back to the jail that we're connected to, and we start working in that environment, there's a lot of ongoing training necessary. So we're constantly doing, you know, environmental exercises, mock scenarios, you know, to keep the dog's skills to where they needed to be. And then we would also get tested every 12 months on the dog's capabilities for the team, as well as the handler and the dog. And if we didn't pass that 12-month certification, then you'd have to go back for more training and recertify. So it was always a bit of a stressful time for most people going through that certification process.
Well, all of our therapy dog handler teams would know all about that, Tim.
Yeah, well, it sort of goes
Poor
hand in
things.
hand with a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, right? And because one of the reasons why the dogs don't work well in assessment days is because
It's
of the
because their
stress
handlers are
levels
all an
of the handler.
emotional wreck
You know,
during their
there's some,
assessments.
that's right, yeah, me included.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to call you all out.
It's normal. It's completely normal, and just luckily, most of us have good dogs that get us through. It's not us getting our dogs through; it's our dogs getting us through.
Exactly.
The majority
Yeah,
of the time, it works out fine, and every so often, we have a handler plus dog meltdown, and I go,
yeah, yeah.
oh
It's
no.
all part of it. All part of it.
So
Um,
we'll be referring everybody to listen to this podcast to
yeah,
prepare for their assessments and their working role with their therapy dogs, because it is
great.
stressful. It is
It
stressful,
is
and
different,
it's all
different
super important.
environment, different kind of stresses, different environment, but no less stressful or relevant for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so I ended up at the academy working as an instructor towards the end of my career. I had four general purpose dogs that I certified and qualified with over my 13 years that I was there.
Wow.
And I ended up working at the academy for a little bit, not for a huge amount of time, probably about 12 months. I think I was there before I left, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I was also a really good decoy. And a decoy is the guy in the bite suit that teaches dogs how to bite. Building young dogs' confidence levels of pushing forward towards a threat, biting. Even the mechanics of biting is really nuanced and interesting, and how we can get dogs to learn how to bite and how to push in. And some of the most intimate and present moments I've ever felt with the dog is having a 40-kilo German Shepherd biting into my bicep, you know, with my head and face right next to theirs, just almost like in a dance with them when they respond, and the way that I move to be able to give them, you know, some feedback that they've done something good and to build that confidence. So a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that I experienced through that process that I now sort of look on in terms of like presence and connection and energetics and things like that. When I reflect back on a lot of the stuff, I had no awareness around it back then, but some of those moments are really very profound.
Mm.
Um, yeah, So it was an interesting career. I loved it. I loved every minute being on the dog squad. I could talk to you for hours just about that, but I don't think we're probably going to have time. I'll just mention my favorite dog. I won't say favorite. It's probably not a good word, but Boss. Boss was my last and probably most difficult dog that I worked with, and I think that it was fitting that he came to me towards the last 3 4 years of my career because I certainly wouldn't have had the skill set or the knowledge or the awareness to be able to handle a dog like him if he hadn't come to me at that stage. And I want to mention him specifically because he probably had one, like not the most, but definitely had a huge impact on my awareness around connection, and also getting the balance right between listening to our dog's needs and emotions, but also making sure that our dog understands that we are in control and that we can make good decisions for them. Because when he came to me, he was very troubled. He'd put a few people in hospital, including 2 police dog handlers. He'd put a civilian in hospital as well. So he was on the road to being euthanized. And when he came to me, it was his last chance. So if I didn't make it work with him, he was definitely going to doggy heaven a lot earlier than he needed to or than he did. And so I'll just tell you a quick little story about him.
Okay.
When is that okay? When
Yeah.
I first got him, he turned up in the truck, and his owner brought him to the jail to meet me, and got him out, and we threw the ball and had a great time. And then he got back in the car, and then his owner left. I just let him settle for a little bit, then went back to the car to take him out again. But the first thing he did when I opened up the cage was his hackles went up and he started snarling at me and was showing me a huge amount of aggression. And knowing his history from what he had previously done to other people, obviously it was a bit of a moment, and I just sort of shut the door and I went, okay, I'm just going to kind of walk away from that and give it a minute. And I ended up calling a few people that had had some interactions with him and that were around when he had some previous aggressive moments with the previous handlers. And one of the things that I noticed through those conversations was that the times that he had actually been aggressive towards people were all associated with a similar event. And the event was that they were trying to put a chain over his face to be able to manage him or sort of work with him. And it's not so much about the chain itself as it is about the adverse reaction that he was having to it. And the first instance of him actually showing that aggression towards someone was he was sleeping, and I think somebody in a civilian environment kind of like walked over to him and tried to pat him while he was sleeping, and he woke up in that moment and then basically was just defending himself because he was scared and didn't really know what was going on. But he learned very quickly, obviously, that he was able to manage his stress through that aggression. And so then when he started to feel that stress, then he would relieve that stress by obviously moving forward into that aggression. And so he gave me that warning signal, and I closed the gate. After finding out that it was more about what I thought, hopefully at the time, and was correct, was the chain, because obviously he had an aversion to the chain. I walked back to the car with a harness, and I opened up the cage, and I just held the harness out, didn't say anything. And this is a moment I'll never forget with him, where he just walked through the harness. He put his head on my chest, and I gave him just a couple of just pats like that, and flipped it up, and then off we went, and we just went for a big walk and threw the ball a little bit, and so forth. So it was just a really beautiful moment of connection that I had with him, because I had taken the time not only to just take time with him, but also just to learn a little bit more about his history and put together some of the things that were important with regards to how he was feeling. And that allowed me to just spend a lot more time with him, actually deconditioning him to the trigger that he had initially, which was that check chain. So it wasn't so much that he wasn't trusting me, it was that he didn't trust that chain. And I don't know if maybe somebody at some point had put a check chain on him and used it in a fashion that was going to obviously make him feel stressed, because that in the police dog world, there's especially a while back, that was fairly common for people to be training dogs with check chains and using fairly harsh methods with regards to some of the ways that they train their dogs.
The yank and
Not
crank.
everybody, the yank and crank, it's not the way that they do things now everywhere, but it's definitely something that existed at the time. And so it's natural, and it makes a lot of sense that he would then have an aversion towards that that piece of equipment. I spent about a month after that just feeding him with the check chain next to his bowl, then putting the chain around, so the bowl inside the chain, and then holding the chain and eventually just hand feeding him through the chain until I was able to slip it over his neck, and then take him for a walk. Now, we didn't use that chain for training. I just want to make that really, really clear, because I didn't agree with the yank and crank. That got me into a lot of arguments with a lot of people as well. But what we did have to do, because it was part of our protocol of the equipment that we were using, I still had to use it for daily management. So I would put the chain on him, and then I would double it over and clip it up so that it was just like a collar. It wasn't tighter and tighter as it was being used. But I had to desensitize him to that equipment as part of that process. So, I guess I wanted to share that because he was a dog that was extremely formidable. He went on, and we did have a couple of moments that we had to work out together a little bit later on, which I won't get into in this podcast. But we ended up having a really, really successful and strong partnership. And there were a lot of people that were scared of him, and he had some really strict controls placed on him at the jail because of the way he was. And I was the only one that was allowed to manage him. And one of the comments that the manager at the time said to me was that the only reason this dog is still alive is because he's got you as his handler. So I think it's really important that we take a lot of time to consider how our dogs are feeling, the emotional impact things are having on them, from what we're doing, the equipment that we're using, the environment that we're placing them in. And it doesn't matter what role our dogs are doing, whether they're a police dog, whether they're a security dog, or whether they're a therapy or an assistance dog. They all have the same feelings. They all have the same need for us to have awareness around that and for us to be able to advocate for them. And they also need the same leadership and guidance, and to be able to know that they are safe with us. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and talk about that stuff with you guys.
Yeah, which is something that's been popping up for me in the teams that I've been working with lately as well, has been the self-evaluation piece and knowing your dog. And there've just been a couple of occasions where probably I've thought, I'm not sure that you have as much knowledge about your dog as what you might think you do. So we're constantly, forever trying to improve our education to our teams so that they kind of know what to look for, because the relationship that they have with their dogs is so important, because in times of stress, or whatever it might be in the environment or whatever, an interaction with someone they're visiting with, in times of stress, that relationship is going to be your safety net, to keep your dog's head above water so that they don't either have a really adverse reaction, and it's like a traumatic sort of response to something that impacts their ongoing welfare, and impacts their state of mind ongoing, and might impact their ability to do their job in the future, or also someone gets hurt. So I'm really keen to always keep talking, having these conversations and reminding people that they're in a team with their dog. It's not just that you're taking your dog to work with you, even though we all love that, but we're working as a team. So really getting the communication happening with your team partner, super key.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really, really important. And I guess from my perspective, there's a few main components to that. Like it's quite layered, and I think a lot of people may feel like if they just work on the obedience behaviors, or they just work on the relationship, and they don't really understand how to put it all together so that the dog's actually feeling safe, or that the dog's actually feeling like you're someone that they can trust to always advocate for them, and always put them in positions where they will be safe no matter what the environment is, and no matter how they're feeling at the time. So, but that can be tricky, right? That can be really tricky to try to put all that together. And there's so much, information out there for people if they start Googling or looking on YouTube or looking at different dog trainers in the industry to try to know what is the best approach for them. And oftentimes, there's extremes on both sides of the fence with regards to how you do that. And I think there's a saying that you guys may have heard of, that comes up a lot for me when I'm talking to people about this, and that is that there's only one thing that two dog trainers can agree on, and that's that the third one is doing it wrong.
Yes.
And so that resonates, because it it's true, like everybody has their own experience. And so, when people are putting things forward about their own experience, that's worked for them in some manner in their own experience, but it may not necessarily apply to the person who's listening to them for their individual dog. So, it's I guess same with me. I have my experience and what I've been through, and my interpretation of what I see and my connection with dogs. And hopefully I can give that to people and provide some valuable input. But I also still, even with my own clients, like say to people, just keep researching, keep looking, keep listening, keep talking, keep learning. I'm forever learning, and eventually you'll mold your own path. You'll find the way. But what's important is that we keep searching. That's the most important thing. But certainly, like understanding a little bit about the dog's emotions, understanding about our own emotions, which is a big thing I talk about a lot, that a lot of dog trainers probably don't. And that is, talking to people about how they feel before we start actually looking at even how the dog feels. Like, how do people feel, when they're holding the lead, if they're going out into the world with their dog and they've experienced some reactive behaviors, like that's some scary shit for people that haven't really, been taught or know how to work with that. And so then we have to think about what comes along with that. So for somebody who's, let's say, experiencing reactivity with their dog, aside from the behavior itself, which can create feelings of fear, it can create feelings of guilt, people feeling like maybe they didn't do enough for the dog when they were younger. It can create feelings of shame where they feel like, other people are watching me and judging me. And there's so many things that can come up for people. And all of these things are going to have an impact on how our dog feels, because whilst we're feeling those feelings, we're putting that out there for our dogs energetically, and they'll pick up on that. And whether that's through our resonance and energy, if you believe in that, or whether that's just through the dog intrinsically and intuitively sort of knowing that something's not right, like something's not right, you're being different, this is not how you are at home. Or maybe they can smell the cortisol levels increasing in our blood. There's so much documentation and evidence to show that dogs are acutely aware and in sync with our own emotional energy. So for me, it only makes a lot of sense to be able to try to make sure that we can show up for our dogs in a way that is going to present that calm confidence for them before we even start trying to help them through their own stress. Yeah. And that sort of things for me really came about a lot through my exiting corrections as well, because when I left corrections, I left because I developed cumulative PTSD from the environment and having to be somewhere where I was constantly on edge, constantly on guard, constantly in my sympathetic response. And prior to going through that, I didn't really have a lot of awareness around this sort of stuff. And I feel like I can connect well with dogs that are experiencing this sort of stuff, and also people, because I've lived the extreme of that to a point. Like I've lived through a period of time that was very dark and very, very challenging, and I needed to be able to establish strategies for myself to be able to work through that. And the things that I learned through that process are so helpful and so amazing at being able to not only show up for my own dogs, but also show up for my clients, and then help my clients to also show up for their dogs as well, just through regulating our own emotions.
Yeah, so on your personal journey, I know that you got, because so for everyone's loving this already so much so far, you can hear Tim did a podcast with Panos, what's it called? Life with Your Dog.
Life with Your Dog, yeah.
Life with Your Dog podcast. And I listened to that and I immediately messaged him and was like, you have to come and talk to us about this stuff. I'm vibing. So you had your experience with PTSD, mental health struggles and stuff like that, and learned some strategies to help through that, get through some of those experiences. And now like a breathwork pro. So
yeah. maybe pro is not the best word. Let's not put me up too much. They've got some expectations there that I need to meet. No, definitely. I would say I'm a breathwork coach. Yes, I have certified in a method of breathwork, but it's quite simple, but really powerful. And so I think, and that's two things that I think are really key with almost anything in life, right? If it's simple and it's effective, then we need to lean into that and then tell everybody we know about it so that we can share it. Dog training, breath work, whatever it is. But yeah, so my journey through I'd say recovering from that, because I don't really experience day-to-day symptoms like I used to, in terms of the anxiety that I used to get. And for some context around that, part of that for me was panic attacks away from the actual environment that I was working in. So like I would go to work and I'd be in that state of like constant alert almost, like it wasn't safe for me to be able to switch that off in that environment. And then when I was at home washing the dishes in the completely safe surroundings is when I would get the panic, the heart palpitations and the stress levels rising and the panic attacks. And it really kind of indicated, from what I know now, that I just really had a highly dysregulated nervous system. And PTSD, I guess, is such a broad, and you obviously would know a lot more about this, Sam, but it's such a broad kind of term that's used to describe so many different kind of symptoms in a broad range of different people and environments and experiences. So for me, that was what was happening for me. And then anything that remotely kind of made me think a little bit about work, like going down, say, a corridor at the shopping center towards the toilets, because that's very similar to what the spine of a prison cell looks like with the doors, and that was the environment that I was working in for all that time, and had to respond to incidents in those kind of areas. So for me, I was building conditioned emotional responses to different situations, and then moving away from that was really difficult. I did a lot of talk therapy. I did a lot of different things, and really just found that none of that was really helping me. Like none of it really felt like it was giving me any kind of progress at all. And what was really helpful in the initial stages was just being removed from the environment. That in itself was something that was helping, and also the fact that I was still working with dogs. And really, that's one of the reasons why I developed Diverse Dogs in the first place, was because I had that overwhelming need to have that purpose. And without that purpose, I was going to go down a big hole really, really quick. So having the dogs there to work with and that external purpose that was greater than myself was something that I now know was a big part of my recovery also. But moving forward, I came across breathwork accidentally. I went to an event on the Gold Coast with my partner at the time, and I was really only there to support her because she wanted to go and do this 3-day event with this bloke called Dr. Espen. Amazing guy. If anyone out there wants to look him up, he's brilliant at what he does, and he's healing a lot of people through his programs. Ultimately, what happened during that 3 days was a lot of exercises around feelings, like around like anything that we feel with regards to experiences that we've had, and some awareness around what those feelings are and what they represent, how we can turn those feelings into superpowers almost, by reframing what they are and by reframing the identification that we place on those things. But more importantly, towards the end of it, we had an opportunity to do this breathwork exercise, and it was really, really simple. It was pretty intense, but it was really simple. We just basically laid on our back and breathed really heavily for about an hour. There was a couple of different types of breaths in there that we did, but they had a drum and they were beating a drum to keep the cadence for our breathing, and they gave us some instructions what we needed to do. And at first I thought, oh, this is dumb, like this just feels weird and a bit strange, but everybody else was doing it, so it was all good. And then it's really difficult to describe what happened, but at some point I just lost complete awareness of where I was. I felt an overwhelming like exiting of, can I describe it as like energy, but dark energy, and it wasn't mine. It was just exiting my body, like rushing. It was overwhelmed, like so overwhelming. It was just going, 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 going. And I had the experience that was attached to that was also I went into some form of an altered state of consciousness. Is the only way I can really explain it, and a feeling of all my dogs being around me, the dogs that had passed previously that I'd owned, and the messages that they had for me during that experience, which helped me to reframe and let go of a lot of the guilt that I may have had with regards to some things that happened with those dogs, because of my inability to be aware of the situation at the time and with them, and what that led to. which I can talk about if you'd like. But ultimately, I would say it was an experience that was overwhelming. I would say it was quite spiritual. It opened my eyes up to a whole new dimension of thinking. And more importantly, after it had finished, and as I progressed through life, for the next couple of weeks, I just started to feel better. Like I just started to feel so much better. Like the anxiety was less, the panic attacks were less. I was feeling just better within myself. Um, and so I kind of realized that regardless of what's going on during that process, because there's so much happening in there, I'm not even going to try to begin to talk about what is happening. Um, except for with regards to maybe nervous system regulation, because that's what I really want to talk about today. But it made me feel better. And I was like, this works. This works. I want to know more about it. And so I did a lot more research into it. I came across a guy that I really resonated with, who was also recommended to me by some close friends that I'd met at that event. And his name was Trey Williams, and he's a beautiful man on the Gold Coast, such a really loving, conscious man who is spreading love to people and teaching people about the power of breath work and nervous system regulation, and how to be able to control that ourselves, to be able to increase what we call our window of tolerance, which is the window of tolerance is our ability to be able to handle stress. How big is our window and how much stuff can we fit in our window before it cracks? And so I went and certified with Trey. I did a 5-day immersion with him, which also had an 8-week online component afterwards, which basically just certifies me to be able to work with people under that particular style of breath work, which is called the transformational breathing method. And so it's a little bit gentler than the original breath work that I did in that first event. It's more geared towards titration and helping people to release smaller amounts of trauma over time, as opposed to that really big, like bang kind of experience that I had, which for me was probably really great and what I needed, but for a lot of people would be really overwhelming. And I know a lot of people who have experienced that and just left the room before it finished because it was too scary for them.
Sounds not
Yeah, so
that
that was my
helpful.
intro to what's that?
That sounds not that helpful.
No, exactly, right. So yeah, so that was my introduction to breath work. And then the more I started to do that, and the more I started working with my own breath, and also feeling the benefits of it, and also the additional things for me that came along with that, like consciousness, awareness, and presence, and learning more about that stuff, and learning more about having just a different perspective on life in general, having an awareness around my identity not being attached to my thoughts and not being attached to my feelings, and more who I am is actually the awareness behind the thoughts and the awareness behind the feelings. And it's drastically improved my quality of life in terms of my outlook on life and my window of tolerance. And so yeah, so then when I'm talking to people about their dogs, I start with that, and I'd ask people, like, don't straight out ask them, but I might get some feeling around, how they're presenting, and maybe some subtleties around their own personalities. And I'll just start by just offering some really simple strategies around breath work, and then really how deep I go with it will be dependent on the client and how receptive and responsive they are to the conversation. But it really helps. It really helps. It's some really, really, really simple strategies people can use, and everybody has access to it for free, right within themselves, just how to breathe. And if you know how to breathe, you can actually regulate your nervous system, which most people think is an automated response to triggers, which is true, but it's also the only automated response in our body that we actually have a lot of control over by activating our breath.
So some of that to some people probably sounds like a bit of a hippie kind of way of like living their life.
Yeah.
But there's heaps of science behind, using breath to regulate nervous system. So, if people want to, they can do a deep dive into that. I've just finished listening to a couple of weeks ago, actually, The Dose Effect. It's an audiobook on, it's free on Spotify Premium. So if anyone has Spotify Premium, it's The Dose Effect, DOSE. dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And it's a really easy to listen to book. And it's got all the
Right.
science in it.
Right.
And there's breathing activities in there as well. Breathing is something that psychologists teach people all the time. So even if, you can go as deep into it. Like I like a bit of the woo-woo kind of spiritual stuff too. Like I'm really into that. But if anyone's kind of like, I'm not like into that, that's fine. You don't have to be.
So I'm glad you
Breath
said
work
that.
No
is still
one's
important.
forcing you.
Yeah, I get excited about it, and obviously I'm passionate about it, and I've had my own experiences with it. And Yeah, and there's a lot of different reasons why people would experience the things that I did. I could interpret it the way that I want to interpret it, and the way
Mm,
that feels good for me and that helps me. Somebody else, that's not their experience, right? But understanding that there is actually some science behind it, and
mm.
the
Heaps.
spiritual side that I experienced could be the fact that this type of breathing and the really heavy breathing that we were doing has the capacity to release a molecule called DMT, which is
Mm.
a chemical that can be produced by the brain at birth and at death, and it's a heavy hallucinogen. So, small amounts of that are going to make someone go into an altered state of consciousness and experience something like what I did. So,
Hell yeah.
regardless of so regardless of whether it's something that you view as a spiritual connection, which
Mm.
I do, that helps me live my life in a way that is fulfilling and that helps me feel better about who I am. There's so much science behind it also, like you said, in terms of how we can use it to even just help regulate our nervous system. And really that's the key, like
Yeah,
regulating our nervous system through our breath. When people learn how to do that, it's a game changer in how
absolutely.
you can manage your own life and then also co-regulate your dog by also activating that. Yeah.
And this is the key. So, you know, a lot of dog trainers are working with people on reactivity with their dogs. And I
Mm.
hear a lot of dog trainers saying like that's their favorite thing to work on, but also it's the main thing that people go to dog trainers. Like it seems to be like there's so much reactivity
Huge.
around, huge
It's
amounts of dog
number one.
reactivity. We have
Yeah.
teams that have reactive dogs as well. Um, and people seem to think that it can't be fixed, like the owners seem to think that it can't be fixed, which it can. And I know plenty of dog trainers that are spending all day fixing people's reactive dogs. But a big part of that, like which you've already alluded to a bit, but a big part of that is what's happening with the handler. And dog trainers do understand that once you've had a traumatic experience with the dog, so your dog gets attacked by another dog or whatever, something happens and now the dog's reactive, or whatever, nothing happens and now the dog's reactive, nothing you know about. So what happens is we get like a trigger stacking for the dog and the handler because the handler is, like you mentioned just before, experiencing all those stressful feelings, those negative feelings around um, everyone's looking at me, my dog's embarrassing me, people think my dog's aggressive, like I don't know, or I don't know what to do. Like once the dog starts, like kicks off, I
Mm.
don't know what to do, and now I feel like I'm kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
which is it's all part of it, and the trainers know that, like we know that that's going to be happening. It's totally normal, and it's normal for people to not know what to do
Yeah.
in
Especially when
regard to
there's
our.
so much conflicting information online too. Like you can go
Oh
down a
yeah.
rabbit hole and
Hmm.
get so lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, as to know what to do.
And that's frustrating too, like or you've already spent money on it, on a trainer, and haven't seen anything change, or those sorts of things can really yeah, like layer the stress on for people. And then they, doing things like going walking in the 4 a.m. walking club with everybody else with
Avoiding,
their reactive
uh,
dogs is also walking.
they're in flight in that nervous system response. They're in that fear response of flight themselves because they're avoiding
Mm.
situations that they need
Hmm.
to actually be in to help their dogs. So it's
Yeah.
like when we look at those things, the people that are having their own reactions to the dog's reactions, and we're going into the nervous system responses, it may just not look as obvious, like, but
Mm.
exactly that, we're avoiding, we're in flight response, or we get angry and we start yelling at our dog, or we start yelling at someone for getting too close after we ask them not to come close, and we go into a
Mm.
fight response, or we're trying to have this conflict with the dog to control them in the moment that it's happening, and we're in a fight response with the dog, and like you said, it just layers and layers the stress on top. So having an awareness around how we feel is the most important thing, and then also having some strategies to learn how to be able to, one, stay grounded in ourselves, so that when things are going wrong, we're able to present calm. We're able to, even if we are a little bit anxious, it's completely normal to feel the nerves. But having, like I said before, I'm not my nerves, I'm not my emotions, and knowing that I am the awareness behind that stuff is really helpful, because then I can sit back when I'm having those feelings and say to myself, this is not happening. I have the ability to observe. I have the ability to be aware that these are things that are happening in my immediate physiology that I have some control over. And then when you have control over something, you feel a lot more empowered. And so being able to be empowered in those moments is what's going to help people get through them, to create positive associations for their dogs. And their dogs are then also going to be experiencing their owner taking control in a calm way consistently. And I think that's another important thing, is having communication and really well practiced things that we can do to try and help our dogs through things. It could be a place command, it could be just a simple with me for a disengagement from another dog, whatever it is. The dog sees us taking control, right? So they feel us, they see and feel us taking control in a way that is keeping them safe. And so when we can do both those things, our dogs start to relax.
That's
At a
right.
situation, I just want to tell a little quick story. This was quite a while ago, but I've always had, like, I suppose Dougie's the type of dog, he's very friendly and he's very social and he's very confident when other dogs have come up to him. And I used to have a reactive dog, so there's still things that I've had to work through that he has. I mean, he's just open to the world. But I was walking him, going to a cafe with a friend, and this huge black German Shepherd bolts over to us through the cafe. The guy that the owner, I don't know, he was doing some sort of training, and the German Shepherd was only on one of those sorts of, like, the small slip leads.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so this German Shepherd's bolting up to us and he goes, no. And I'm standing there with Dougie. Dougie's huge. I can't just pick him up like if he was like a dachshund or something. I'm standing there receiving this dog. And I was
Jesus,
just
take
like,
the wheel.
I was just living my worst fear in that moment. Yeah. And it was for my birthday as well. So I was with my friend, like, this is like a cafe visit for my birthday. So this dog comes over and Dougie's just open, he's grounded. I don't know if I'd say that he was, totally calm, but he was prepared, to receive this dog.
Calmer than you were.
Oh, he was calmer than I was. So I'm standing there. This dog's come over and it's intensely sniffing him all over, like just right up in his personal space. I'm already reading the signs that, like, Dougie's only got a level of tolerance before he's going to say back off. And, like, while to everyone else it probably looked like that German Shepherd was friendly, it wasn't exactly exhibiting signs to me that felt like it was overly social. It was probably just desperate to have something other than what it was doing. So anyway, so I'm standing there and I'm like patting the dog and I'm, panicking inside and, like, keeping my voice as calm. I was faking it to the best of my ability, hoping that this owner was on his way to come and get this dog. Anyway, so about 3 or 4 minutes into that, I'm wondering why this owner hasn't walked up, and I look up and he's still like 10 meters away, just standing watching the situation. And I'm going, okay.
Was he walking?
Panic.
Or was he?
No, he was just watching.
Just watching. Yeah, just casually watching this,
just
like,
watching
nightmare situation unfold.
Like, oh, Fluffy's making a friend.
Yeah. And the dog is right over Dougie too. It wasn't, the sort of side-eye calm interactions. It was like crowding Dougie. Anyway, and so then I yell at him at that point. I'm like, come and get your dog. Because, like, nothing else is working.
Birthday.
Like, why am I still standing here doing this? And in that moment, Dougie goes full reactive and starts barking.
God.
full
Yeah.
reactive.
You
He's never
escalated
done
it.
that. He's not a reactive dog in general.
Oh my
But the
God.
moment I raised my voice, he was
Yeah.
like, okay, it's on. Like, mum's stressed. I'm going into fight mode. And this German
I'm
Shepherd's
taking
standing
the
there,
shepherd down.
So I got you, Mum. I got you. We're in it together. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
standing there wrangling
Yeah.
my Groodle with this
Oh my
German
God.
Shepherd just kind of like taunting him a little bit. Thank God the German Shepherd wasn't like, yeah, well, let's go.
Oh
But
my
he
God.
wasn't also moving away like, you know.
But it's probably also good that the German Shepherd was off lead, or at least not under the control of a lead when that was going on as well, because that
Yes.
restriction and
Frustration.
that frustration on the
Mm.
lead probably would have also built that. So I think that's a really good example,
That's a
of
Yeah.
great example.
things being okay, even though the tension's there, like staying grounded and calm and breathing through that. And in that moment, whilst that's going on, there's a couple of things that I would have recommended that you do other than yelling at the
Please.
guy.
Yeah.
Although don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of yelling in my time as well at people. But
It was more
just
yelling in the sense that he was like
A
10,
long way
15 meters
away.
away from
yeah,
me too.
I
But the
get it. Yeah,
raising of that voice was
yeah.
just, that was the
Totally.
trigger.
And so as soon as you raised it, so you've gone into fight yourself, and then your
Yeah.
dog's matched that energy. So it's really about, you co-regulated your dog into going into that mode, because he's looking at you as his leader, right? And you made that first jump to that
Mm.
level. So yeah, it's a great example.
That's
But
a
even
great
just a couple
example,
of things
Max.
that people listening could do in that situation is, as the dog's coming over towards you, even just putting your dog behind your back, and then standing in front of your dog, instead of allowing the other dog to just come straight in and get in their space. And oftentimes that'll actually confuse the dog that's coming in as well, especially if you just keep kind of like parrying their movements, if they're trying to get around you, to just sort of move around in front of them so that they can't get to your dog.
Mm.
Most 9 out of 10 dogs will just kind of eventually look up at you and go, like,
Yeah.
what?
Get out of the way.
And then when they do that, then you step forward and give them a little bit of spatial pressure, just to say, hey, you're not welcome. And
Mm.
people get that hint. And if a dog's actually coming in with the intent to do harm to your dog, there's not much you can do. It's going to happen
Mm.
regardless. 9
Mhm.
times out of 10, they're just curious.
Mm.
So give a little bit of just calm presence in that moment, and then in a language that they can understand, and just go, hey, we don't actually want you here. Helps keep the energy down, and you're not yelling, you're not shouting, and you're using body language, as opposed to a lot of high energy or high aggression type tactics to be able to manage the situation. um,
Mm.
yeah, difficult in that situation with the other guy not really helping you out.
It was
um,
also because it was quite literally the thing that I'm most scared of, is being like
yeah,
approached by
Sounds
of
like
the
you
course.
really,
biggest dog while
Yeah,
I'm standing
and
there
that
with mine.
plus it sounds
exactly.
like you really embarrassed yourself as well in public. So
Well, I burst into tears and blacked out. So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so that recount was partially because Nikki, my friend, was with me. I don't remember the second half of it. Absolute
Yeah.
panic. Absolute panic.
oh my God, this is the best story I've ever heard. You're so relatable, Max. I love this.
Well,
I
I
think
thought
everybody's got a
that
story
might
like
be
that, though, right?
appropriate to share.
Yeah,
No,
sure.
I
Thanks for
love it.
sharing.
I
Yeah,
think that's within the realm of normal response as well.
Hmm.
And
yeah,
this is such a perfect story. Like, I didn't even know this story. Um, this is where the trauma comes from, right? So
Hmm.
that highly emotional response, that's what lays this memory down in the part of your brain that's like, we just nearly died. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that was
yeah.
life or death, when it wasn't, but that's what
That's where it
happens
was
in the
sitting.
brain, and it gets stored in there. And then that's just data for like the next time you walk your dog, you get hyper vigilant because you're like, this is how I nearly die when I walk my dog. Like, this is what happened. Or you see another shepherd or a big dog or a black.
Well, I've actually passed that same dog on 2 other occasions since, and the dog's been off lead. And I've been about 2 meters away with Dougie on lead and that dog off lead, and just calmly just like got
right.
Dougie on the other side of me and gone, just
Hey,
breathe.
You're a
hey,
warrior.
hey. And Dougie would have watched you do that too and gone, oh, mum's just going through. She's not worried about the shepherd.
Yeah.
She's not paying it any attention.
Mm.
She's telling me to come with her. That's what I'm talking about, like just staying grounded and giving your dog some direction and letting them see through your actions that everything's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
When
he's
that
been fine. So
Cool.
that is truly super impressive, Max. It's very impressive. Because people, this is hard. It's hard for people to do because, and it's normal. So I'm not having a go at anyone that's finding it hard or that's
Oh,
got
of
some
course.
reactivity. And dog trainers aren't going to judge you. Like if someone's dealing with some of these issues, that if you reach out to a trainer, they're not going to judge you on this. We see it all the time, and it's totally normal. It's normal. And when someone gives you you hear stories like Max's story, and some of you are probably like, oh my goodness, I feel so seen right now, So the trauma gets laid down in the brain, the hypervigilance comes about when we go and walk the dog, and then the dog feels that alertness, right? So as much as we might want the dog to not feel it, and we might try and pretend, what we're really trying to get to the core of today is that you can't really pretend to not have anxiety around your dog because they can smell it. Like they know you. Like you can pretend around another human and they might not figure it out, but the dogs, they can sense it. So what we actually have to do is regulate yourself. So, and especially in a situation like Max had, when that's scary, right? Like it's very normal to have a meltdown yourself or like an anxious response when something like that happens, because it's scary. Even if you just get fully adrenalized, and just your system's like, I'm gonna punch this guy in the face for
quite
having his dog on
literally. I was like, I'm gonna report him. I'm gonna go and take photos. Like, I don't know
Get
where
this dog
went.
locked up. It's your last day out and about, dog. When you get adrenalized like that, the dog is like, hell yeah, like, and they're either going to go like Dougie did and be like, you son of a bitch, I'm in, or they're going to be like, holy shit, let's get out of here, like, oh my god, and so either way, it's not what we want from you're going to either see the dogs. What I mean by that, the dog's either going to go into more of the reaction habit of like, oh, okay, well, when I feel tension, when I feel tension around me, anxiety, hypervigilance, being adrenalized, I'm moving forward. I'm getting people out of our space by pushing them out with my big scary barking and carrying on like an idiot. And then you get the dogs that get timid. They go, oh, I can't handle this. Like I need someone to protect me. Like oh my God. So in that situation, if that's already happened to people, or if you're listening to this, if just try and remember like Tim's advice. But if this happens to you ever in the future, the big thing is to recover yourself as quickly as possible and like actually recover yourself. So not just like, I'm going to pretend I'm okay. It's doing things like the breath work that Tim is talking about, learning some of these strategies, recovering yourself as quickly as possible so that you can recover your dog. Because if you don't recover yourself, then it is very challenging to recover your dog. Some dogs can have all sorts of shit go down and they're fine. Like they're just like, whoa, Tuesday, wild, can't wait for Wednesday, but some dogs are like, what? I'm never leaving the house ever again. My dogs have been bitten by other dogs before. They don't care. Like Nala got bitten in the ass by a dingo in the middle of the night. Like she doesn't care. She doesn't. She's, I don't know what she was doing. I left the gate open. I went out of the yard, their little yard, through one gate and came back in a different way and forgot that I'd left that. I forgot that I'd gone through there because I never go out that way. I never come back the other way. So the little night yard gate was open. So her and Oliver just went for a little hoon around my like bigger house yard. This is when the dingoes were coming straight through the house yard. And I hear this almighty screaming at 4 o'clock in the morning, run out. And she was already back at the house. And she got bitten on the bum. And Oliver got bitten as well, but only on his fluffiness. He's a big fluffy border collie. He had saliva on his fluffiness. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's getting a street fight. Like, what is happening right now? But I wasn't there. So, that she just had to handle it. She just had to get bitten on the bum and run away, I guess. Like run back home. But my reaction
may have given as good as she got. back to the other dog too.
Look, there's every chance that she was trying to make babies with a dingo. There's every chance. She's that kind of girl, you know.
That's not
She
quite where I
wasn't.
thought you were going to go with that one, but okay.
She wasn't desexed then either. I thought I was going to have dingo puppies for sure. Like I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah,
I
but
digress.
I wasn't there, so she couldn't have my reaction couldn't layer on top of
Mm,
whatever, and she just
mm,
just they just were dogs, and they just had a scrap, and they ran home, and then that's it. And
sure. And
yeah.
dogs have actually like a really amazing ability to do that, you know, to be able to have high levels of stress
Mm,
and then switch down, you know, and that's something that we can learn from them, and that you know, and that's it's very normal. And like in the even in like the wild animal kingdom, if you look at prey animals that are being chased by a predator, and they're
mm,
in flight and they're in that flight response and they're running away, and obviously the adrenaline's pumping and there's fear and they're
mm,
scared going through all that. Um, if they're lucky enough to get away from that predator when things are safe, they actually take a couple of minutes where they'll be still and their whole body will start shaking and convulsing. And what's happening during that process is that their nervous system is resetting, you know, and
mm,
so then they'll basically like shake. It's an involuntary shake. It's the nervous system coming to terms with what's happened, and then almost like within an instant then they get up and then they start running around and then they start eating grass again because the threat's gone.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I think it's something that we don't recognize enough in today's society, is that that's actually how our nervous systems are built as well. You know, they're initially designed evolutionarily for us to be able to run away from danger when there is a real and present danger, and not so much for the perceived danger that we have in our daily lives in terms of our relationships and our work, or if we're going to like, you know, get the deadline done on time, or our dog's being reactive, or this person said this to me, you know, like all these things that are built up in our daily lives, our body and our nervous system doesn't know how to interpret between that and a real threat. And so then
Mm,
people's nervous systems are constantly running up on a sympathetic response, and they're not having the opportunity to come back down to that parasympathetic response quickly, um, because as soon as we get over one threat, we're thinking about another one. And then we get over that one, then we're thinking about another. And so our nervous system, just like what happened with me in the jail, gets dysregulated. And we don't have a chance to actually go into that fight or flight response and then come back down into our parasympathetic response. And the stronger we can make that happen, or the stronger we can get our nervous systems to be able to function like that in equilibrium together, then the better we're going to be able to handle those situations and the better our dogs will be for it. So it's not about not being scared, like Sam said. It's not about not being nervous or not going into some sort of a response. It's about having a really strong functioning nervous system that can actually regulate through all of it. And then through co-regulation, helping our dogs to also remain calm as well. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. We had a situation a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to get Kiki, my livestock guardian dog. She had car sickness when she was a puppy and blah blah blah. Anyway, I bought her a van. So now trying to get her used to the van. And I was like, right, I'm just gonna take her for a short little drive, let her out, and then she'll start to be like, wow, like that's like a portal machine, this van, like just teleports you to like cool places. So I actually drove her to like the end of our street. It's like we have a cul-de-sac and it goes onto another cul-de-sac. So I like drive her down it's like semi-rural sort of thing. I've never walked down there before. Like, why would I? Like, do you know what I mean? I don't walk down there. But I parked at like the end of this cul-de-sac where there's conservation area is. You don't take dogs in there because there's koalas in there. Dogs aren't allowed. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take her, I'm just gonna walk her up the street. And she's just gonna have a little sniff around and that sort of stuff. We're walking up the street. This is like she hasn't been out since she was little enough that I could pick her up and put her in the car, right? So I'm just starting. I socialized all her socialize her critical period, and then she's got too big. I can't pick her up, put her in the car. But anyway, now I got the van. Anyway, long story short, I'm walking down the street, and this house that's got like it's just down the street a bit. The gates are open. Always, the gates are always open. And I didn't know they have dogs. So I'm walking down there with this 60 something kilo livestock guardian dog, and this cattle dog comes tearing, like pinning it from the house. The driveway is probably 100 meters because I made my partner go with me because I'm like, I need help with this like if anything happens with the dog, you know? So anyway, this cattle dog's tearing down the drive, barking towards us, and I see it and I start walking and I'm like, just try and intercept this dog to my partner. And he's like, like, like ankle tap it, or I don't like what?
Yeah.
I'm like,
I
try
do.
and protect, try and protect us, try and intercept this dog. And I'm walking down the street. Now remember, this is a livestock guardian dog that's 60 something kilos. I'm not worried about her well-being in this situation. I'm worried about your cattle dog, and I'm worried about losing the lead of my dog. And then what? So I'm walking down the street. She sees it and goes ballistic. And I'm like, I knew it was coming. So I was just ready with the lead. I'm like, there's nothing I can do here. I was holding it and waiting for this. I'm like, you better intercept this dog. Like, my partner, like, she's gonna bite it. Anyway, it turns out they've got one of those fence barrier collar things.
Yeah.
So it stopped, because I'm thinking it's coming straight out the gate at us. It stopped and like barked at the fence for like a couple of seconds until it realized like Kiki was going off. Like she was like, yes, come here, cattle dog, absolutely, come here. And I was like, oh no. Anyway, it ran off. It realized whatever and it ran off. And I was like, first thing, like, and so she starts screaming once it runs off. Like she does this like howling, I don't know what, like some kind of regulation come down she has, that she just squeals. But anyway, so she's carrying on with all this noise and I'm just ignoring her because all I'm doing is, and you've got to like release all your muscle tension, because I've been a post. I'm being a post holding her because it's all I can do. There's nothing I can do. She's about, this dog's coming for her. She's gonna bite it. So I'm straight away breathing. And when you're breathing, there's lots of different breathing techniques, but remember you've got to release the tension in your body and in your muscles and stuff like that, because you'll be holding, and even all your facial muscles and things like that. And you've got to try and remember to open your mouth and smile and try and bring all of that stuff back, so that by the time she had stopped yelling at this dog and I'm like, I just walked off like, nah, let's go. And she just walked off and she was like, cool. That was fun. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I'd said to my partner, I'd been giving him a bit of, like, just if anything happened, don't grab her and hold tension on her. It's tempting to hold tension on your dogs. I know. And I know you feel like you have to. But it creates, like Tim was alluding to before, it creates barrier frustration. It creates like a negative reinforcement into a behavior. It just creates a worse situation. So if anything like this ever happens, you've got to keep tension off that lead. And so I'm walking back down the street and she's walking like beside me, like no problem, like no tension on the lead. And then he like grabbed her lead and like just like put a heap of tension on it. And I was like, so just remember about not putting tension on the lead. we were already past, we'd already gone past, like already halfway down the next property. But that's an example of like, I had already dealt with it and given her, like I never put tension. I was the post. She put all the tension on the lead. But as soon as she stopped putting tension, the tension's gone. And you have to trust that, okay, well, if she wants to go again, that's okay. And I'll just be ready. But don't preempt it and try and hold the dog in and back, because that often create the reaction. And that's the difference between, I'm a dog trainer. So, I know this, and a psychologist. So I know this stuff. So I've already really quickly dealt with all of that. But my partner hadn't. And that's why, 20 meters down the road, he grabbed her again, and I was like, just let go of that.
Yeah, it's really good.
But we see that all the time.
All the time. It's really important. It's one of the 101s, right? It's like attention on the tension, like what is your dog feeling through the lead? It's really important that it stays loose. We need to learn how to hold the lead so that we have really good control, that we can respond quickly if we need to. They're having that awareness around how the dog's feeling around the collar, because the more tension they feel, the more heightened they'll get. And also, people preload the tension on their dogs when they see something coming, and so the dog actually
Yes.
gets their heads up. If they precondition this feeling for the dog, because they'll see another dog or they'll see something they know as a trigger. Dog's oblivious to it, and they all of a sudden tighten the lead, right? And so that becomes then a precursor to the dog going, "Oh, where is it?" Where
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if we can keep things calm and keep the lead loose, the dog might actually just look at that and go, "Oh, yeah." It can make a really, really big difference.
So these are amazing tips that we're talking about, everybody that's listening. Just so you know, these are amazing tips. They're things that we talk about all the time, but when you're getting into this world, it's never, you can never be reminded of this too often. And we have to check in with ourselves all the time too. So like when I had my experience with Kiki, I definitely had to be like, okay, Sam, go through the motions. You need to calm down. Like, or I was catching one of my horses this morning and she can be the one that can be just a little bit funny on approach. And I go, okay, so remember, I need to stop now and start doing some deep breathing and, reduce all of my pressure on her. Before you go in. And I said to her, because I had the barefoot trimmer coming this morning and it was raining and I was like, God damn, I don't really have time for you to be a bit difficult, Fern. But I always remind myself of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I tell myself, I actually don't have time to rush. That's what I don't have time for, because it's going to take heaps longer if I rush. And I think that's really key as well with our breathing and our self-regulation stuff, is that yeah, you might have to take a couple of minutes to do that. And you might be thinking I can get really bored doing breath work personally. Like I can get really like, okay, am I done? Like do something else.
Yeah.
But slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and you kind of actually don't have time to not do it, I think.
That's it. Yeah, I agree. But also, it kind of like moves into another area that we need to consider as well. Because everybody has this innate need to rush down to their dog and start consoling their dog. Like
Yes.
it's okay, like hugging their dog, patting them, and even even during an event, like the dog's obviously stressed, and so it's our natural human tendency to want to help them feel better. And how do we do that for each other? We console each other. We'll say it's okay, or we'll use some gentle words that we know what those words mean. Like if you say to me, "Hey, look, it's okay, everything's safe." I know what that means because I can understand English, but you can't say that to a dog and expect them to know what you're trying to communicate to them, because to them they're just hearing blah 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 blah. There's a scary thing over there, and instead of them seeing you take decisive action, they're actually just seeing you speak nonsense at them. So in that moment, it's really important to have a couple of key things to be aware of, and that was one thing. And that's, yes, we need to make sure that we can sort of set our energy back first. But also what's really important is that we don't try to console our dogs in moments when they're stressed and attach words to those moments when they're stressed without actually putting some work behind the scenes around helping the dog to understand what those words actually mean. And so what I mean by that is we're working with conditioned emotional responses, right? And so if you don't understand what a conditioned emotional response is, then you just think that you're consoling your dog. But if you have an idea around it, you actually will learn that you could potentially, maybe not always, but potentially you could actually be making things worse by creating a conditioned emotional response to the dog to a word that you actually want to mean for them to calm down, but instead
Yeah.
it's going to create a scenario where your dog actually hears that word and they go, "Oh, there's that word again. Oh, there's that word, something's wrong," and it can compound things. So the way that's exactly how a conditioned emotional response develops. Like if I use an example for myself, which is a bit of a weird one, but so I have I have all of the conditioned emotional responses that I developed during my time in corrections, and that's a no-brainer. Being around that environment, responding to really, really sort of horrible scenarios. And so because those feelings and the sense of safety that I had in a lot of those scenarios then would be attached to particular things that are also going on in that environment, like the example I gave before with the hallway, scenario.
Yep. Yep.
Go down that hallway, I have a conditioned emotional response where I automatically start getting a little bit heightened because it's just my body responding to that particular thing. So a conditional emotional response can be a word, but it can also be a place. It can also be a thing. Like it doesn't have to be one. It's just an associated thing that comes along with the feeling. And so what I see a lot of people do, and everyone can probably relate to this, is that, and I used to do it with my dogs before I knew about it. Our dogs would be stressed, and we'd see all the visible signs, and the dog would be, heightened or upset, the tail between the legs. And then we start patting the dog and saying, it's okay, it's all right, it's okay, and patting them. And we're using words and doing these movements to them that we believe are going to be helping to calm the dog down. But because the dog doesn't understand what we're trying to do, and the only time they ever hear these words and these things that we do in that moment is when the dog's already in a heightened state of stress, they learn to attach those things, the words, the way we respond to them with the stressful feeling, and then that could become a conditioned emotional response. So if we're telling our dogs it's okay when we're trying to calm them down, we might actually be telling them, get ready, something's about to go wrong, and then we're actually building it. So the good news is that we can actually use that same process to condition our dogs into having a calm response to a word as well. And that's what we do with counter conditioning, right? And that's a whole nother podcast. But we're trying to create positive associations to triggers or things that normally the dog would feel stressed by. So if we spend a lot of time actually using those words and patting our dogs in a certain way, whilst the dog's in a state of calm at home, when they're safe, and we're breathing through our nose, I'll talk to people about how they can do that soon. Breathing, activating our parasympathetic nervous system, dropping our nervous response right down into calm. And then when we notice the shift in our dogs, because you will, I promise, if you spend enough time next to your dog breathing, and you actually stick with it, Sam, long enough, your dog, your dog will have a shift, right? You'll see it, and then they'll actually just relax. And then when you see that, that's when saying it's okay, maybe some gentle pats. And I like to just use just pick one particular way, like a tactile kind of response that you give them as well, that's maybe a little bit different to what you normally do, right? So I actually like to teach people to even use a little bit of collar pressure in that sense, to try to condition that collar pressure is actually something that can elicit a calming response instead of overexcited. So if we hold their collar, not super firm, but we just hold it so that they can feel us holding it whilst we're in that state of calm breathing, whilst the dog's super relaxed, and we're holding their collar and just a gentle pat in one direction. It's okay. It's okay. And we can condition so that if we do that enough, when we actually do go to use that in a situation where our dog is a bit more stressed, it's going to make so much more sense to the dog that we're actually telling them it's okay, you're safe. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I also like, I think that it's okay words. I think that we're often saying that to ourselves. And I like to just spice that language up a little bit to something that's more of like a prophetic kind of message of something like, you are so brave, something like that. Like, look at you, brave dog, that's what that kind of gets me into like the next mind frame of like, wow, you're so, and I'll like, I'll do this and be like, you're so strong and pretty, like you're such a good girl, like look at you, that sort of stuff. And it's like it reminds you as well, like get out of that like mentality of like, hey, something horrible happened and you're gonna be okay, more into like, hey man, cool, like that was wild, like that sort of stuff. Or like if I have like crazy things happen, I like even talk shit about the other dog, like it's my sweet nothings into the dog's ear, like that dog was very naughty to you, wasn't it? Like
I love it. I actually think, because people say to me all the time, like, "Oh, I know I shouldn't talk to my dog like a person, or whatever." But I actually don't think, like, so long as we know that we're doing it for us, more so for them, I think it's okay. And so long as whatever we're projecting in that moment in terms of the intent behind it is positive, the dog's going to feel it, right? And it's more a feeling based thing.
Well, because they're sensing it off of you. Like that's so you are actually talking to yourself. So you might as well frame that stuff into something that's going to be useful for you to get you into that that
Yeah.
state that you need to be in, because that physiological state that you're in is actually
Yeah.
what's going to tell the dog that they're okay.
And
that
you know
goes
what's
back
also,
to,
sorry, just
you're right.
wanted to say on that, in terms of like therapy dog and handler teams, that's really interesting, because if you're also saying that sort of stuff to your dog after a stressful experience and you have other people around you, whether you've got the client or you've got a class full of kids, that's probably also going to send the right message to them as
Yeah.
well. So it's not just you and your dog, but they would also probably be hearing like a more positive message as well. I don't know, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, what happens in a client session, like if a kid does something a bit wild and it's like,
Yeah.
maybe um there's a big noise, or they throw something and it hits the dog accidentally or whatever. Not in like an aggressive way, just in like a hopped up on
Yeah.
Mountain Dew way. Go lands near the dog and wakes him up, whatever. I'll say things like, "Whoa, well, that was a crazy, Nala. Did you see that?" Like, or it'll be things like, if I'm trying to settle like someone down, I'll be like, "I don't know, Nala. What do you think about this? I don't know. How do you feel about this, Nala? I don't know." Like, it'll be that sort of stuff. And we have to talk to them
Mm,
like that. Like,
mm,
it's,
Sure. For
I
sure.
can't be like, fussing over the dog in a real like nervous and protective kind of way, because that's not what's useful for this client right now.
Mm.
Like, what we need to do is find a way that we can talk this person into stopping doing that gently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And it's a really nuanced kind of like um, position that therapy dog handlers are in that respect, because you've really got
Mm,
to navigate so many different layers, and you're not just looking at the dog. You're also looking
yes.
at the client and how the interactions are, going to come with positive outcomes for both of them,
Yeah.
and advocate for them. Yeah,
And you're
that's
modeling, and so sometimes, like, a lot of our dogs work in schools, so sometimes like shit goes down in schools all the time. Like, kids are just like, yeah, they're just out of control at times, especially on a windy day, for example. Like, the kids just lose their
mm,
mind.
mm.
So they might be just like, having chaos happening of some kind with the kids, and maybe the dog's like, I don't know, but the handler might be in a position where they need to say, "Kids, like, you get out of the garden," or something like that. And
yeah.
they can check in with their dog, but it also needs to be that we don't go straight into like, "Oh no, the dog," like, "Oh no," kind of stuff. We need to have, and that's why we want stable dogs as therapy dogs. That's why we're trying to develop these dogs into this ultimate peak level of stability that they can achieve. um
Mm.
Really helps. But the handler, in situations that take them by surprise, this happens sometimes. We hear that
Mm.
situations where the handler gets taken by surprise, they might get a bit of a shock, they might get something emotional goes on for them, and they actually can't really tend to the dog
Mm.
right this second, because they're not in physical danger or anything like that. It's just that something is happening and I need to tend to these students and this parent who's screaming at everybody in the office or whatever it might be. But it's really hard to do your job and have, like, a lot of people have stressful jobs. They've got high stress stuff going on. It's pretty hard to do your job, but be trying to manage your stress all the time. Like, trying to regulate yourself all day. Like, when I get home from the
Yeah.
day, like, I'm often like, I've just been regulating myself all day. It's
Yeah.
time to let it out.
And who cops it at the end of the
My partner. No.
day?
No, this
Um,
is why I have so much. That's why this is one of the things that living on a farm is like the perfect thing for me, because I get home and I immediately walk out of my car straight out into tasks, outdoor tasks, physical activity, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, it's my transition. That's, yeah,
mm,
works for me.
for sure. Well, it's important. I think the transition's a good word too. It's the same as, you know, uh, just allowing our dogs to, decompress. We're
Mm,
decompressing
yeah.
at home. But, people have their routines. For a lot of people, they go to the fridge and grab a beer.
Mm,
That's their decompression. That's what I used to do. Um, and so it's great that you've got that. I think a lot of people maybe, you know, have unhealthy ways that they decompress. So it might be a good thing to chat about too, like establishing some routines and some habits that are going to help you decompress for you before you try to decompress your dog. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
For,
and trying to
for me,
decompress alongside their dogs as well. And if you've got some of these issues kind of festering away under the surface, like walking a reactive dog is not a decompression activity, so something that people might have been using as an activity for themselves in the past, having that relationship with their dog, now all of a sudden, if the dog's developed reactivity, all of a sudden that's like gone as one of their strategies. And that's probably why you see get so much joy. One of the reasons why you get such joy from helping these owners, because
I
they
do.
get that back. Which
Yeah.
is just so
Well,
special.
well, they get it back, but they also change their perspective, right? And so, like, one of the
Mm,
things you said at the start of today's talk was like, we can 100% fix, people's dogs, and I like to try to not use the term fix too much, because it kind of like puts this black and white attribution to this multi-layered thing that we can say, well, we can fix this. Like,
mm,
it's like saying that, like, if you do this, you can fix your PTSD, or if you do this, you can fix this
mm,
this other thing that's happening for you, and um, it's the wrong way to look at it from my perspective. Like, I'd rather sort of have a look at the entirety of the relationship and go, how can we make the relationship better? Like, how can we make your life better, and how can we make your dog's life better, and how can we do that in a way that's going to also help us keep moving forward? And so long as we're always moving forward, we're always winning. And it doesn't mean that necessarily we're going to fix the problem like
mm,
entirely. There's so many layers to it. It could be genetic, the trauma that's so deep that it's not going to go away.
mm,
But we can learn to regulate it better. We can learn to create more positive experiences in outings with our dog, so that the dog actually comes home feeling fulfilled. We can look at situations when we do have a reactive moment, or any kind of stressful situation, and reframe it, like you said, instead of it being this thing that happened to us and going into that victim mentality, to be able to have the awareness of it and say, how did that happen for me, and how can I
mm,
learn from that, and how can I
mm,
how can I do better next time, or what can I do from that scenario now that's going to actually help me finish this outing, for my dog to finish on something positive. And so, working with any dogs and people,
mm,
that's, I think, what's really important is having that perspective that we're not actually trying to fix. There's nothing wrong with your dog. There's nothing wrong with them. Well, like,
mm,
they're life. Like, we're life. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. They have behaviors and they have experiences that shape those behaviors. And there's a lot of things that we can do to help them feel better. There's a lot of things we can do to help them cope with different situations. And that's where the focus needs to be, not on the end result. If we're too fixated on the end result, then we're going to miss too much in between. And so
yeah.
that's
Do you find that that helps people, like that mindset, maybe sort of like having less of that sort of concrete goalpost of like, because that's probably
yeah,
what clients say to you too when they come
yeah,
and go like, oh, I could fix the dog. Do you find that
yeah.
changing their perception and perspective
It's
around that makes a difference to the process and the progress that they make with the dog?
absolutely, like,
Yeah.
I think people are more open, I guess, just to, if you reframe it and you really put a lot of perspective around what we're trying to create, what we're trying to do, and we put the focus back on making progress as opposed to the focus on an end result, um,
Mm,
then any progress is great, and then therefore every little bit of progress is motivating the person to continue moving forward. Whereas
yeah.
if we have our mind set on a goal, it's great to have the awareness of that we're moving towards that. But if that's all we're focused on, then we're going to hit moments when we're not seeing a lot of progress for a little bit of time, and maybe things are stalled a little bit despite that we're putting in the effort. And so then our mindset shifts to going, oh, this isn't working, or we're not as motivated to keep moving, rather than just going, what can I do right now in this moment to help my dog, and having the strategies to be able to know that you can do that with confidence, and that is helping your dog, even if it doesn't look like it is immediately, but that it is because you've put in the work.
Mm,
Um, I think it's really helpful, and it's pretty much one of the things that, again, a lot of this just comes back to the way that we live our own lives as well. And so this is why I love talking about this sort of stuff in terms of, reframing life. So,
mm,
things don't happen to us, they happen for us. What can we learn from this scenario? How can we use it for
mhm.
growth? Same thing with dog training. We're like, you're going to make mistakes. No one's perfect. There's going to be things happen. And so many people are scared to make a mistake that they don't even get started. You know, so
Yeah.
it's important to just have that awareness. Like, that's life. Like, there's going to be stress, there's going to be things that happen, and we're going to make mistakes. We can either, go into that victim mentality and then start avoiding situations and walking our dogs at 3 a.m, or not going to parks and doing all the things that people do to just avoid the shitty feelings that we don't want to feel. Or we can step into that bit of feeling of being uncomfortable, but with the knowledge behind us and the awareness behind us and the strategies behind us around how can we respond to our dogs in these scenarios so that we're going to continue to grow. And that's the most growth happens in the uncomfortable moments in life, always.
Yeah.
And if we avoid the uncomfortable, then we avoid growing. And so
Yeah.
I think it's important mindset to have with regards to our dogs, and that, the mindset away from shifting from training to more the relationship that we have with our dogs, our dogs' perspective on life, and how can we help our dogs to have a different perspective on life by creating more positive scenarios for them. And then also working with those around triggers, like, so I love using play as an example, teaching people how to play with their dogs, to tap into their instinctual prey drive that the dogs just find so fulfilling and so rewarding, right? Being able, that small moment in their day where they're actually allowed to chase and bite and go nuts and sink their teeth into it, like these behaviors, dogs and puppies are discouraged from doing the things that are most natural to them right from an early age for puppies. So a lot of dogs go through the most of their life just feeling suppressed and not being able to express that side of themselves. If we can provide them opportunities to not only express it, but to thrive in that moment and really just get that outlet to chase and bite and cycle through that instinctive prey cycle, which I teach people how to play with their dogs and manipulate the toy in a way that's going to help them experience that full cycle of prey. Then providing our dogs with an outlet for genetic fulfillment that is so rewarding for them and so fulfilling. And so if they have a reactive moment in the morning, and then at the end of end of your walk, you finish off with 5 minutes worth of play where you're connecting with your dog through play, that's what they're thinking about when they walk through the door. They're not thinking about the dog that they reacted to, at the start of the walk. And like, that's really important. And like I attribute like play and not just play, it could be and breed specific stuff too. It could be searching, it could be just exploration in nature, something that the dog's doing intrinsically to fulfill their own needs. And we're allowing them to do that. And by allowing them to do that through us, we're also bonding with them and connecting with them as well. And when you look at, I'm one of the things that I loved so much about my job in corrections was that everything we did was play-based rewards, everything. And even the biting, like even the bite work, when I have a German Shepherd running at me, and jumping into my bicep to teach them how to actually attack somebody, that is a dog going through the motions of an instinctive like behavior that they find, if they're the right kind of dog for that, they're loving that behavior. And I'm actually connecting with those dogs on a level that sometimes even the handlers haven't experienced, because it's so intimate in that moment. And when the dog pushes into my bicep and bites down harder, and then I kind of move my arm in a way and maybe even just make a little bit of a squeal, like, and move my arm so the dog feels that, and then they go, oh yeah, and they bite in harder, right? And then I can give them I'll give them some praise for that as the decoy and say, oh, good boy, and then like give them a pat, and I'll bite in harder again. And it's just this really intimate dance, right, of seeing the dog go through these activities that they're absolutely just loving, and then take away from the bite stuff, working with tug toys and balls and play, like our dogs experiencing chasing, frustrating them through chase, but making it easy enough for them so that they feel like they're going to win, but also hard enough so that they have to put in the effort. And if we make it too easy for them, they're going to go, this is boring, I don't want to do it anymore. There's no such thing as a suicide rabbit. Rabbit's not going to jump up and like throw themselves into the dog's mouth. But if we too hard, if we make it too hard, the dog goes, it's too hard, I'm going to give up. And it's finding the sweet spot in between and then just progressively making it harder and harder and knowing how to play with our dogs to let them cycle through that full experience. And one of the most powerful social bonding moments for dogs, if they were actually in a pack in the wild, would be the hunt, when the dogs are all working together towards a common goal that is going to help them all survive, right? And they're all working instinctively together. There's energetics at play there that we don't understand. They all have their role, they all do their thing, but they're all in sync. And they're all working towards this common thing, which is the prey, right? So if we can create a scenario with our dogs that, well, yeah, it's a bit different because we're moving the toy around and we're actually in control of this whole activity, but the prey is the toy, and the dog and I are a team working together to get the prey. And so that creates such a strong connection between the handler and the dog that most people will never experience because they've never truly understood what that can do. And police dog handlers know it, military dog handlers know it, and there'll be a lot of people that will feel that feeling that maybe they don't fully understand what's happening. And I didn't understand what was happening. But the relationship that I had with my working dogs at work, I loved my pet dogs, but the relationship with my working dogs was next level. Like just the way we connected, the way we understood each other, we become in sync. If we're going into a scenario in the jail and there's not a lot of room for error, you just learn to move together. And people can experience that with their pet dogs or their therapy dogs if you learn how to play, if you learn how to do it in a way that's giving your dog the outlet. And the key is giving them the outlet in a way that's going to be so fulfilling for them that it's creating that connection and bond. But at the same time, we control it in other areas of life. So you're not allowed to rip the curtains. You're not allowed to chase the bikes. You're not allowed to, chase the cat. You're not allowed to do all that sort of stuff to live with us cohesively. But hey, every day you're going to get your moment. And when dogs get their moment every day, they live happier, more fulfilled lives, and they're less likely to be reactive. And they're more likely to have a stronger window of tolerance because they feel like they have more purpose in the essence of the dog they are, as opposed to our human interpretation of, the dog's living a human life in most cases, which is what happens. Yeah. So I think that's really important.
The update that I mentioned before when we first started was I went to Jazz Whiting's seminar on the weekend. And she does heaps with play, and it's just so fascinating. So I just spent the whole weekend fully immersed in play stuff, and just so everything you're saying, like it hits. I'm really looking for. You might be developing some, actually. I'm looking for someone who's developed like a program on play, because I know that our teams need.
I can do that.
Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. We'll send everybody to Tim, because so important, and people don't know how to play with their dogs. I've been working with Kiki on play, and I've been doing individual sessions, and I have been reading books on play therapy to revisit, like, why can't I play? Like, why? What is the blockage for me to play? I gave myself a therapy session on AI about digging into what is going on for me, like what's holding me back in the play, because I could feel that she was holding back in the play. So yeah, it was just been a really interesting journey that we're on with that. But yeah, it is one of the things that when you're talking about practicing like your co-regulation, it's super key. Like that's something that you can do with play. Like,
absolutely,
so if you bring the drive up, bring the excitement up, open the window of opportunity, as Jazz would say, open the window of opportunity, get into the play, and then calm down.
And absolutely, yeah. So it's what you're talking about there is I'm glad that you asked me whether that's something that I can do, because I've actually have put together a program. I'm actually running one in April on a property near Biggendon for a bunch of farmers and their kelpies. And I'll tell you about how this happened. So I've had this idea for a long time that I wanted to create an experience for handlers with their dogs, or I should say owners with their dogs, not working with working dogs anymore, owners and their dogs, to learn all these strategies, but not only learn them, but also just experience, like actually have an opportunity to experience over a couple of days what this can feel like and what it can look like, and what kind of progress that you can see with your dog in a short period of time if you know how to engage with them in this way. And so initially I called the program Presence and Play. And so I was taking people down to the beach and we were doing breath work with our dogs, and then we were breaking into play with our dogs, and then we are going back into breath work and then going back into play. So we were going in and out of that high arousal state and then co-regulating our dogs back down into being calm, and then going back into the arousal and going back down into calm. And so what's happening in that process is that both the human and the dog are going into like a sympathetic, parasympathetic. It's like doing reps at the gym for your nervous system.
Yeah.
And it's teaching to be able to calm down, even though we're not in a fight or flight response. There's still a spike in our nervous system when we get activated. And so that's initially how that started. And I was getting a few people to come along. It sounds a bit weird, to people that haven't sort of experienced that as well. But moving forward, I have a beautiful friend who has a sheep property out near Biggendon, and I was visiting them over the Christmas holidays. And I was talking to her about my this idea that I wanted to run. And there was a bunch of other girls there and guys doing some work with their kelpies, like the sheep herding, and they had a well-known trainer that was there doing some work with them. And one of their dogs was having a bit of a problem with one of the exercises that it was doing, and it wasn't taking direction under that heightened arousal state. It just wanted to keep running and smash into the sheep. They call it bunting, I think, and bunting into the sheep. And it wasn't taking direction. And so we had to talk about it. They were talking about all the different things that they would do. And I just threw a curveball in there from my perspective and said, maybe you need to just teach him how to take direction while he's playing, so that we can put him in a high state of arousal, give him direction, and then the release of the command that we give him in itself is part of the reward. So when he's on the sheep, if he's had experience with that, learning how to take direction through play, when you give him that command during the herding, and he goes into a down or he stops, he knows that he's going to be released again, and he has the opportunity to be able to regulate himself in that moment because he's in a high arousal, but he can still take direction. So we sort of taken him away from the sheep to be able to teach him these skills to then go back onto the sheep. And I wasn't there for long enough to really sort of follow it through into putting the dog into the sheep, but they're giving me great feedback in how the dog's going, and then we're working with the player, every day, and just change their whole perspective on how to work with that dog before they go back into it. And this kind of just started some more discussion, and they were all there while I was talking about how this stuff works. And then they just reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love you to come down and do a workshop." So I'm going down in April, and I'm going to be doing a Breaths and Barks. I've changed the name. It's called Breaths and Barks.
Love it.
And focus goes over 2 days, but the focus is about nervous system regulation through breath and co-regulation, presence, which is really important, which we haven't spoken about today, but it kind of goes hand in hand with breath, and then connecting through play. And so being able to teach people how to go through these stages of co-regulation and breathing for us as well as for our dogs, and so then it has that overall feeling of connection, and also the dogs are learning to take direction through the play. We're learning about nervous system regulation, and everyone's just having a bunch of fun, while we're also connecting with other like-minded people that are there to help their dogs as well. So so I'm already starting to do that sort of stuff. And I'd love to do more of it. So any opportunity I can get to help people learn how to play with their dogs and learn about the power of breath, I'll be there.
I love that.
Yeah, no, our community would definitely be interested, because we put, a heavy focus on reinforcers other than treats. So the more reinforcers they can have in play, the better.
And everything else is what that we've talked about too, like that.
Of course.
We're using play as our rewards. We need to co-regulate our dogs. We need pretty good bloody impulse control. Like we need all that stuff, and you can get it through play. And it's fun. It's a fun way to get it. But if you don't have any guidance, like if you don't really understand, you know, the predatory sequence and stuff like that, if you don't know those things, then there's a lot of ways that your play can improve with your dog. And there's a lot of ways that your play with your dog can be more fulfilling genetically for your dog and all that stuff as well. So it's like
There's actually a lot. Sorry, Sam. There's actually a lot as well that if you don't understand those things, that you can actually make things like go backwards with
yeah.
regards to how the dog actually feels about play. Because if we're doing things with our dogs that we're trying to get them to play, but we're doing it in a way that makes no sense to the dog, or they're just, you know, like they're not winning the toy enough, or we're making it too hard for them, or we don't really quite get how to have that flow, so that the dog's constant. You know, it's like if you're playing wrestle with your kids, right, and you're just dominating your kids all the time, they're pretty much not going to want to play with you, you know, because it's just going to be boring because they never win, right? But if you make it a little bit challenging for them and you put in a bit of resistance, but then when you see them put in a lot of effort and then you like fall onto the ground, you're like, ah, you got me, and let them jump all over you, right? The kids are like, yeah, like I did that. And it's the same kind of thing. Like you need to know how to play the game. You need to know when to have a bit of theatrics about you as well to let your dog feel that they did that, right? But there's some achievement in what they did, and that builds confidence. And then that confidence, then they can then start to take that confidence with them into other areas of life. Yeah, it's really cool.
So cool. We need to start to wrap this up because we've been talking forever, even though I've like got all these notes here of more things I wanted to talk about, but that's okay.
We can do a round two at some point.
We're gonna have to, because yeah, it's just endless, these topics are just endless.
Yeah.
So did you want to give us a quick breathing technique for people that have stuck with us this long?
I'd love to. There's two, actually, can I talk about two different things?
Yeah.
There's something we didn't talk about a lot, which I'd love people just to have a little bit of awareness around. And that's the window of tolerance that we spoke about. So the window of tolerance is how much stress can you live with, or how much stress can come into your window before the window cracks, right? Like how many black German shepherds can run at you before you start yelling at the owner. That's all our window of tolerance, right? And so a lot of us have a really small window of tolerance where, you know, we're sitting in our car and someone cuts us off and like we have to give them a finger, or we yell something through the window. Even if we're not outwardly expressing that, we're still in our head like having these thoughts and emotions. And so having a wider window of tolerance is the same thing as saying that we've got a better functioning nervous system. And so we spoke briefly about it with regards to going in and out of sympathetic, parasympathetic through play. You can do the same thing through breath. And so when we breathe in through our mouth, and we breathe in fairly deeply and quite rapidly, not super rapid, but when we're breathing constantly through our mouths, we're actually stimulating our sympathetic response. And most people are walking around in their everyday life breathing through their mouth. So having some awareness around this, even just breathing through your nose as a way of functional breathing, is really important to try to help keep us in a calmer state. But if you sit for 10, 15 minutes per day and you count 30 breaths and you breathe in through your mouth first, so it's like, okay, so we're doing deep breaths in through our mouth and we're counting 30 of those, okay? And then we have a breath hold for about 30 seconds. Don't do the breath holds if you're pregnant, but everybody else is safe to do breath holds. Okay. So we do a breath hold, which helps us to learn to cope better with CO2 regulation in our body, which has a lot of great benefits. And then we repeat that 3 times. So we do 30 deep breaths, breath hold, 30 deep breaths, breath hold, 30 deep breaths, breath hold. And then we repeat that cycle, but instead of doing the mouth breaths, we do deep nose breaths. And so then we go, and we do 30 of those. And so what you're doing during that, I call it a daily practice, is what Trey teaches through the transformational breathing method. It's like a condensed version of the full breathing set that we do. And it teaches our body to go into sympathetic response and then calm down from sympathetic response. Okay. And we're doing it in a way that we're connecting it with our breath, and we're not reliving any kind of traumatic event or going into a scenario that's stressful or scary for us. We're just actually activating our own internal systems through our breath. And so our body's having an opportunity to practice going in and out and regulating our central nervous system. So that's one thing that I'd like to bring some awareness to. And obviously, if you feel like you start doing that and you get a little bit lightheaded or dizzy, then just stop straight away and just start with 10 breaths.
I
Right.
was going to say,
And then
I reckon I'd get lightheaded doing that.
That's what I was
yeah.
thinking.
So you just obviously go at your own pace, but you could start with 5 breaths, and just do 5. Short breath hold 5. And we're just going in, and we're giving our central nervous system a chance for our window of tolerance to widen. The other thing that I guess I'd like to leave people with, which is just
Can I just,
such
before you do this one, Tim, can I just clarify the first one? It was in and out through the mouth.
yeah, so in through the mouth and out through the mouth, and
Yep.
then in through the
And this,
nose and out through the mouth.
okay. Yep.
Okay,
Got
so
it.
the first breath looks like this. You're breathing in through the mouth and then out through the mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do say 10 of those.
Mm-hmm.
Have it on the inhale, breath hold for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, exhale, and then start again.
Okay.
All right,
Got
three
it.
rounds, and then it's the same system, but then we're doing in through the nose and out through the mouth. So then it's okay. How much you do is up to you, but you start small whilst you're getting used to it. And but like I said, effectively what we're doing is we're playing with our nervous system in a way that's helping it to go in and out, like spike in the sense, the spike in the nervous system, and then helping us to calm it down again. Okay, through our own breath. The one that's really going to help people out is the simple 4 and 8. Okay, so the 4 and 8 breath is a really easy breath that anybody can do that will help you start to activate your parasympathetic and drop down into your low stress levels. And that's simply breathing in through your nose for 4 seconds. Okay, and then breathing out for 8 seconds out of your mouth. So we call it low, slow, or the 4 and 8. And you don't have to sit there and count 4 and 8 because that gets annoying. Maybe initially when you start it and you get a bit of an idea for the rhythm, and then you can just kind of just breathe low and slow. So we breathe 4 in our nose, and then 8 out.
4 seconds in, 8 seconds out.
Yeah, and you really exhale and elongate that exhale. And if you do that for about 2 minutes, just breath after breath, you'll feel a shift in your energy come right down. So that's a breath you can do before you get out of the car. That's a breath you can do before you walk into a session with somebody. That's a breath you can do with your dog at home for 10 minutes while you're trying to teach them how to learn that it's okay is something that's associated with being calm. And even just your dog sitting next to you, feeling you go from here down to here, they'll feel that. And the more they feel that, the more they'll start getting more in tune with your own regulation, so that when they feel you shift, they'll have that shift as well. But it's like anything, it takes practice, and it feels weird at the start. It feels weird, and you're not going to maybe see any immediate benefits in your first couple of tries. But if you stick with it, you'll start to notice a shift. And you'll start to be able to learn how to adapt that into your life everywhere. Whenever you feel a bit of heightened stress, you start breathing.
Sometimes I use that. I mean, our general rule for like that kind of recovery breathing is whatever you can breathe in for, breathe out for longer, and try and breathe out for as long as you can. So and work towards 4 and 8, but whatever you can do, aim for that to start with. And I like to do that type of breathing when something happens in my world, my immediate world, that I think this might be bad.
Exactly. And not even just bad.
I don't
like
even
it might
feel
just
bad
be
yet.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it could be
I'm not
like
stressed. I'm not freaking
no,
out. I just go,
yeah.
I'll see something or something, hear something, or something will happen, and I'll go, so like a normal person in this situation could potentially not have, like, this might not be good. Yeah. And so I'll just go straight into that sort of breathing just in case I'm gonna have a reaction to this
And
kind
what
of
a
thing.
lot
Clever.
exactly. Not only are you less likely to react to it, but your dog or other people around you are less likely to react as well.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing that I learned in the jails was de-escalating situations by staying grounded. Like if you respond to a prisoner who's having a violent outburst with more violence, then it's just going to escalate into a fight. If you're able to stay grounded and stay calm and keep your words really I guess considered, and slow and grounded, and there's no escalation, you can diffuse nine out of 10 situations.
Yeah.
And so similar sort of thing. Now, if I'd known, I wish I'd known back then, if I just breathed better, well, it would have been even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, but it's and it's so easy, Sam.
It's free.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
It's a
easy,
good
and it's
habit.
free. It's free and it's easy, and everyone can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mm.
That is so cool. Thank you so much, Tim. This is
Thank
amazing.
you.
Where can
Okay.
people find you? What's your website?
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been so fun talking to you guys. My business is Diverse Dogs. Diversedogs.com.au is my website. You can reach me on Instagram, Diverse Dogs AU, or just on Facebook is Diverse Dogs Pty Ltd. You can reach out to me on any one of those. My email is tim@diversedogs.com.au. So if you have questions about any of the things that we've spoken about today, or you'd like to come along to our weekend Breaths and Barks retreat up near Biggenden, or you'd like to just learn more about co-regulating your dog, or you've got a reactive dog, any of it. If you get anything that resonates with you and you want to know more, and reach out, I'm happy to have a chat.
You
And
do online consultations as well, Tim?
yeah, I do. So I've actually got one starting in April, called the Reactivity Success Path. So it's an 8-week program where I teach people 5 stages of learning how to help their dogs through reactivity. And no surprise, the first stage is just working on the mindset of the person. We talk a lot about work, showing up for our dog in a way that's calm and controlled and grounded and we can achieve that through breath work and presence. And then moving into understanding the dog's reactivity, understanding why they behave like they do, learning how to condition things like a clicker so that we can condition a good emotional response to the clicker, so that when we are working with our dogs to try to desensitize them to their triggers, we have an actual sound that's associated with positive and fun and handler engagement. So it serves as 2 functions. There's the communication. You guys know all about clickers. We've got the communication in it to tell the dog you've done the right thing at the right time. But then there's also that conditioned emotional response, that the dog's actually feeling something good when they're hearing that, and then how to play with that and work with that to try to help create more positive associations to the dog's triggers. And that there's 5 separate stages through it all. And then we finish off with teaching people how to play, so they can start tapping into that aspect of making that more fulfilling life for their dog. So that's an online course that goes for 8 weeks. It's a Zoom lesson every week, a Q&A lesson every week, and it's all recorded, so it's all self-paced. And also have a community Facebook where everybody jumps into that and posts videos of their progress or ask questions. They can send videos to me for review as well during the whole thing. So I'd love anyone who would like to come along to that. That starts on the 8th, which is a Tuesday. And it's just a little bit over $30 a week for the 8 weeks. So, it's really,
oh my gosh.
Wow.
$249 for the whole course, but when you compare that to $150 for one private session, it's great value. Yeah, and so I'm starting to try to get the business a lot more online, and this is my start to that, like just starting to create these small online programs with the view to eventually develop that into a full online membership site where people can join up for a monthly subscription and just get lots of support every single month with new content all the time.
Well, all of our teams are so used to training their dogs online with us, and they know it works, and so much of the it doesn't, obviously we need face-to-face stuff too, but like there's so much theory that goes into the dogs that it's what a great foundation even to get you started on your journey of dealing with reactivity. Is you need this knowledge dump, like you really need that, and then you need to go and work on it and maybe get some videos. And like I'm doing my dog training, I'm doing sessions with Pat online, that's what I do, like, do you know what I mean, like, and it's great, so I think there's a lot of space for it.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that people really need, and what I try to do, is just keep things so simple. Like this, not everybody's a dog trainer. Not everybody's gonna live and breathe dogs like some of us do. They're not going to have the capacity to really get the full understanding of a lot of the things that we talk about. and they're not really going to be in positions where they're doing a lot of competition healing or some high level obedience stuff, you know. So I think it's important that we keep things really simple as
Yeah.
well. Like, definitely allow people to have the concept, but what I find is more important is actually just teaching them the skills and strategies and processes. So understanding the awareness of why, but then really focusing on, okay, this is how we help our dog to learn how to disengage from another dog. You know, and we practice that in the kitchen, we practice that in the backyard, we practice that so much so that when we put our dog in a scenario where they with behind their threshold, far enough away that they're not reacting, but they're still feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and then they hear you say that word, and that word means follow me and you'll get rewarded, or follow me and good things will happen, then we can start applying that to, you know, situations that would normally be more stressful. So it's about putting the foundations in a home and then applying those same things into the real world. And when people have the strategies and the systems, then they feel confident and empowered to act, as opposed to feeling confused and anxious in the moment. Yeah, so this is called it's all important, but the focus is more on the systems of how to do stuff. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And people can attend that barks and breaths as well.
Yep. Yep,
It's
there's
a bigger than
limited spots on
that's
that.
up towards like Harvey Bay, Maryborough sort of
Yeah,
area.
that's right. Yeah, Big End, and it's about 4 hours drive from Brisbane, so it's a bit of a drive. It's free camping out there, and they've got camping facilities on the property. So basically, it's just a weekend away with your dog, connecting, learning about breathwork, presence, and play. So it's going to be a great weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. And I will definitely be running one closer to home. When that is, I don't know. I've got to find a suitable location. If there's anyone out there that has a suitable location that I can use for that purpose, reach out to me. As soon as I've got somewhere that I can run it, I'll start putting one together a bit closer as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's still a few spots left on that if anyone wants to reach out. The online program starting on the 8th of April, on Tuesday. And then, of course, just private coaching, either online or in person. If you'd like to reach out and get some help, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that's been useful for your listeners.
Very.
And yeah, if there's an opportunity to do another round at some point and talk some more, I'd love to do that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We'll talk again.
Great.
Thanks,
okay, guys.
Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with Therapy Dogs Australia, or you have a few more questions before deciding, please get in touch with us by emailing courses@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website at www.therapydog.com.au for more information and FAQs.